My name is Bartley, and I have been interested in radio since, I don't know, about 1956 when I built my first crystal set with a razor blade and a piece of pencil lead. So that's 50 years or more, but I'm losing count. Anyway, I knew that one of the themes for this conference would be midget radios. And I was always kind of interested in the fact that midget radios are small and spy radios are small. So I wondered what, if any, connections there might be. So I did a little bit of exploration in this area. So what I'd like to do first is go ahead and take a look at a midget radio. This is a Silvertone Pee-wee, 1939. I've tried to provide sources for this sort of thing. But if you go up on the internet and just do midget radio, all of this stuff will appear. But what's interesting from the present perspective about this radio is the second band. It not only has the broadcast band, but it has the police band. And in this particular radio, it goes up from 1.8 to about 4.9. Now, you may recall or have learned that actually well into the 1950s, there were many police stations just above the AM broadcast band. And I used to listen to them when I was a little kid once in a while. So there was a police band there that later got moved up to VHF, initially up to the 30 to 50 megahertz range. But these radios could be used to listen to your local police station, and usually what was happening is one-way broadcast to police cars. This is in the days pretty much before the police cars had radios to transmit back, but they were one-way broadcasts. Big guy with glasses and no hair has just robbed the bank and is going east on Main Street. That sort of thing. So you got to watch out. So this is a very small radio. So as you can see, I'm sure you know midgets. I mean, this isn't more than 7 or 8 inches across. All right. So these are the interesting elements about this. From the you think about going to the police band to the SPIES band, and we're talking pretty much operations in Europe. Not in the Pacific. And you got to remember, the first time I found myself staggering around Europe, everything is really pretty close together. France is right next to Belgium, and Germany and Spain, and all these very interesting things. It's really not very far away. So you're not talking about thousands of miles. You're talking about hundreds of miles. Now, the police band on this particular radio is 1.8 to 4.9 megahertz. Well, that's actually, think about it as amateur radio, either 160 meters up to 80 meters or 75 meters. But this is actually a pretty good frequency range for relatively short distance ionospheric skip. And those of you who are operators on 80 meters will recognize this. This is a useful band if there are ionospheric conditions that permit skip, and usually in these frequencies, no matter what, there will be skip at night. So if you're in England, this covers most of Western Europe. So in a sense, even before World War II, because the Pee-wees had to be designed in 37, 38, manufactured 39, that sort of thing. There's a miniaturized receiver technology that could enable clandestine operation. And the clandestine operation has 2 aspects. One, of course, is receiving, which can be very important and actually still is. And the other is transmitting. We have the next slide. Now, this is what the Pee-wee looks like. It's kind of beat up, but it's a very, very compact construction. A couple of metal tubes, a couple of glass tubes. And incidentally, this is a TRF. Now, from the point of view of clandestine operations, of the available circuits, there's really 3 that we'd be talking about. Maybe one would be an entirely passive receiver, crystal set. But you wouldn't necessarily be able to operate it very well on shortwave frequencies. And you're looking at a very long antenna too, which can be something of a telltale. But the other 3 available circuits would be the tuned radio frequency circuits, the super heterodyne circuits, and a regenerative circuit. Well, the regenerative circuit has a terrible problem. It goes into regeneration. And when it goes into regeneration, of course, it is sending out a signal. So if you're trying to listen very quietly and not be detected by people who will, beat you close to death and then murder you, you don't want to be sending out a signal. So the regenerative circuits are very, very dangerous for clandestine operation. Well, okay, so we'll use superheads. Well, not so fast, because the superhead has got a local oscillator in it, as you know. Those local oscillators also radiate. And Scott, in the Second World War, convinced the Navy that it should buy the so-called SLR, the Scott Low Radiation Receiver, for use on ships, which weighs a ton because it's completely copper-clad to make sure that no radiation gets out of the local oscillator. Because he based on one anecdotal instance in the First World War of a submarine being tracked down because of an oscillation in a radio, he convinced the Navy that it should protect all of its radios from this, at least in this kind of operation, from any emission from the local oscillator. So that was a Scott SLR. If you ever see them, it's a big old radio. It's a beautiful radio, but it really does weigh a ton because of the copper. So the superheterodyne has definite disadvantages in clandestine operations as well. And in fact, if you look at Peter Wright's book, Spy Catcher, he talks about how MI5 used to isolate the circuits that Moscow was using to talk to spies in England by knowing roughly where the spies were and listening to the local oscillator oscillations, determining, you hear the local oscillator, you add 455 kilohertz, and you would know what frequency the spy was listening to, so you would be able to link up the circuit coming out of Russia with the spy in England. It's a very interesting technique that was used. So the TRF, which was actually what many of these peewees in midgets use, the TRF circuit is the ideal circuit for clandestine operations because it doesn't radiate. And that's very, very important, particularly if you're the guy operating. Here's another beautiful little peewee. Same situation, very nice design. Next. And again, here's a nice Detrola. Now, this is not the police band, but this is a metric in meters, and here's a metric in kilocycles. So this is what the back of the Detrola chassis looks like, and so we've got all metal tubes here. And this will be